Hello, welcome to the Maythorn Monthly, and this is Holyhead. I've driven 70 miles down the A55 from Chester to Holyhead, and this is the gateway to Ireland. And there's been a lot of fuss about the Irish border between north and south, and there's been a lot of fuss about the traffic down at Dover crossing to Europe. But I'd like to point out that this is the second busiest port in the UK, and it also is a gateway to Europe, because as soon as you leave here, you're in Europe and you're heading for Dublin, where they use euros as currency, and they're staying in Europe.
There can be 4 hours between ferries, and then two more or less come at once, one Stena Line and one Irish Ferries. Between them they can hold about 400 trucks, which is equivalent to a tailback along the A55 of about 3 miles. If you're a foot passenger, you can enter from the town centre from the high street or across a bridge into the terminal, and if you come by train, the train will deliver you straight into the terminal, where you just walk across the way and start queuing for your ferry, after you've bought the tickets, of course. Trains run from here into Chester and then off to Manchester, down to the Midlands and to London and South Wales. In January and February the place is very quiet, so a good time to film. The cafe's empty and there's plenty of seats. In the summer, things look a lot different. This is the same spot you just saw me in, giving you the introduction before. This is September 2011, and quite a lot of activity, plenty of light, and you can see a lot going on. This is kids, of course, doing what kids do, while their parents are in the bistro just across the way, but close enough to keep an eye on them. These are the Menai Straits. You cross over here from the mainland of North Wales, and this video archive is even longer ago, back in the mid-90s, when I had my blue Ford Transit and I was doing IT work for a number of companies all over the area. This was one of my favourites though. I used to come to Anglesey to go to Beaumaris and look after the computers and the network at a company that made these trucks in this building in a beautiful location on the Menai Straits. Why wouldn't I want to come here once a month?
In this month's Maythorn Monthly, I'm going to show you some old Marinador video diaries. Not a lot of people saw these because I was more focused on doing the newsletters in between 2008 and 2012. The actual written email newsletters were the main thing that I was sending out. But I was doing video diaries at that time and putting them on the website. I just don't know if anyone noticed because I wasn't putting links in the emails like I do now. This is March 2011, and I'm going to give you a few different bits of this month. First of all, it's about those wild cats that seem to live everywhere. The one place they don't live anymore is at the Torre del Rey, the King's Tower, because they've kind of cleared them all out of there, and I have no idea what they've done with them all, but I filmed them before that happened. And I was kind of drawn into doing this bit because I was watching a program on Netflix last week which was called The Lion in Your Living Room, I think, and it was all about cats, the history of them going back 10 or 15,000 years, which I didn't even know there was, and the fantastic skeletons they've got, the reason that they can jump off a balcony several floors up and land on their feet and not be injured. They've got fantastic suspension, they can spread their bodies out so they're like a parachute, and just so many fascinating things that I learned watching this program. Anyway, after a brief plug for the program on Netflix, let's have a look at those cats on the Torre del Rey in 2011.
Something about a cat, I can't put my finger on it. Part of it is the fact that if every domestic cat in your home is a little bit of wild.
You're so cute!
Cats never had a purpose, they don't have a purpose now, and they probably never will have a purpose. They just turn out to be really good at getting along with people.
A route we always take along the beach and over the headland past the Torre del Rey, and I have mentioned before that this is where we go and see how the wild cats are doing, because there's some quite agonising views of cats to be had. We saw one this time, one black cat that looked very poorly and we didn't think would survive.
We don't have many wild cats in Britain. We do have areas where there are feral cats. There was some on our local hospital grounds for years, but again they got sorted out. But in other countries in Europe it's quite common. The Spanish don't even seem to like having cats in their house that much. They accept that they're wild animals. And in Bulgaria people feel much the same way. So my main contact in the village of Orish, where my house is, Davy Driver, he had a couple of cats of his own, which he calls his own, but there's a number of stray and wild cats around the area, and he now feeds on a regular basis 30 or 40 cats, and that's fairly expensive even if you use the cheapest food, but they depend on him, and when he's away and he comes back to England, they look half-starved when he comes back, and he feels as though it's his fault that he's had to go away. quick recap on what's been going on in my UK property. The house up in Trident in Flintshire, it's snowed up at the moment. The local schools are closed and we haven't been able to get up there. We spent a little time there before the snow started, hacking off plaster on the stairs and taking off the plasterboard that had got damp. So we've ended up with another old stud wall exposed, ready to be redone. Apart from that, we've taken a whole load more stuff to the tip and we're trying to get all the rooms completely empty so we can start with the blank canvas. The place I'm talking to you from now, there's work in progress. This is up in Wallasey on the Wirral, and this is room 1, which I did show you before Christmas. We'd painted one of the walls in a grey colour over there, and there is other work to be done to create the new ensuite facilities for this room. My brother and I went on a course with HMO Daddy, Jim Halliburton, a few years ago, and one of the things that Jim said is that ensuite rooms are in demand, and you can fit an ensuite in any place where you can fit a double wardrobe. So here's a quick demonstration of how you can take the double wardrobe and do exactly what he said, although I don't think he meant it quite as literally as we've done it. Our last tenant here made a real mess of the shower. He was here for quite a few years and I don't think he ever cleaned the tiles and the shower tray. They got covered in a black mould, which I'm sure was unhealthy for him to continue using, and we've been unable to get it off with all the usual bleach sprays and things that landlords tend to use. So we've decided to cover up the tiles, and Bob, our handyman, who's come along for the first time in 6 or 7, maybe 8 years, he was involved in the original conversion of this property. He came up with the idea of putting some cladding into the shower area, and it will cover up the tiles and give it a whole new look. So that's what he's done. So all that's got to be done now is the finishing off, the putting back of the wardrobe frontage and the checking and all that sort of thing. I won't be able to be here for that, unfortunately, because I shall be in Spain. Did I say unfortunately? He's a man I can trust. I'll leave him to do it, and he'll get his money through the bank as I sit in Spain and send it over to him. I fly out from Liverpool tomorrow to Barcelona. I can see the River Mersey out the window of this room, and so if you could look a bit down the Mersey, the Liverpool airport's actually on the riverfront a bit further down, so I could almost see the place I'm going to be flying from. In Spain, the news is that Netjar, the internet provider, has in fact told me they've doubled the speed of the internet. So next month I'll be able to tell you if that's actually true, as in fact I'll know by tomorrow night. They've told me that the speed will have doubled from 15 megabits a second to 30 megabits a second, which is kind of the low speed fibre that we get in the UK, that kind of speed. So that should make quite a difference to what I can do out there.
We're parked down on the marina at Alcacebre. We've just been and had some snacks and drinks at a bar overlooking the beach. The beach is very quiet, just a couple of people meditating, and the whole place is very nice. And we even saw a temperature gauge on the commercial centre saying it was 29.5 degrees. I don't know if you believe that, but we've got a picture of it to prove it. Wedding. The stretch limo went past us as we were walking down there with a parade of dressed cars behind it, and there was a festival on which we must admit hadn't noticed, and therefore we had closed supermarkets at the weekend. Marina Door laid on free food and drink, so there was a big paella pan, and this was being used to serve everybody with free paella. And there was also free sangria, which was lovely and chilled and being served on ice. And there was entertainment during the day and lots of people, and the atmosphere was very good. Even the bars in the gardens were open, the toilets were open, things that have been closed for the last few years were open. Despite what I may have said earlier, the desalination plant is obviously a much bigger project than I thought.
and even more areas are now dug up, including that near the tourist office. And when we've driven around Oropesa town itself, we found that many of the roads are closed and being dug up. So whether that's to deliver the fresh water once it's desalinated, we're not sure. And the boat that we've seen out at sea has been going backwards and forwards, may have been dragging pipelines, may have had divers going down to secure pipelines under the sea, we don't know. You're looking at a house in a complete state of disrepair, and now, compared with earlier video I took, it's overgrown as well. So I can only guess the farmer no longer brings his sheep here, which is a shame because it used to keep all this nice and clear. So the story about this house was I bought it in 2007. I'm just going to fight the greenery to tell you this, from a lady who lives in the village, still does I believe, and she was given the impression by the people who sold it to me that I was going to look after this house and do it up and make something special out of it. All the houses in these villages are basically how we'd have had them in the 60s. They had no inside toilets, no modern bathrooms and kitchens, fairly basic houses, and I've got some pictures of this house from back in 2007. Buying a house in 2007 with all sorts of good intentions didn't quite work out because, as you probably know, in 2008 we had the great banking crash. So everybody who was in property at that point seems to disappear. The solicitors closed down and the property sources closed down, companies went bankrupt, and probably 95% of the people who were doing property before 2008 just closed down, went bankrupt and disappeared, and ran off with our money in some cases. I was told back in 2007 there was a small hole in the roof that needed fixing or things could get worse. Well, it never got fixed because the people who said they were going to organise that, they also disappeared. Water got into the house, and what I didn't know then, but I surely know now, is that the houses here are built of mud bricks. There is some stone, and this wall behind is a fine example of how nice the stone can be. I wish I had more of it, but the whole main core of the house is gone because the water gets in, and I don't need to explain to you why mud bricks are not a good idea when there's water. So the house started to collapse, and eventually the hole in the roof got bigger and bigger until the roof was gone. The first floor collapsed, so there's nothing up there now, and basically everything, including the roof, fell to the ground, and it's down here. So in 2016 I had a team of local men come and clear the site, get rid of all the rubble, and thought that would be the end of it and we'd start the rebuild. There's a lot more rubble gone since, and we're probably going to have them back in again, and now we're going to need a bit more than a few sheep to clear this site. In case I've given the impression that all the buildings in Bulgaria are old houses, this is Svishtov, in the street where my hotel was, with these modern apartments. There's a car dealer, and outside the hotel itself is our hire car, and they supplied it like this with the dent. We didn't do it. At the end of the road where the hotel was, there's a cafe where we had our breakfast of soup quite regularly, and that was right by the Svishtov market where I went for my bananas. You may also remember this restaurant on the hill, which we didn't know the name of at first. It's beautifully layered into the hillside with seating at different levels, and eventually we did find out the name. It's called the Hunting Lodge. A lot of the places in Svichtov that are on a hill are overlooking the River Danube, and this is no exception. It's a human sundial. Somewhere in the distance there, I'm standing in the middle waiting for the sun to come out so I can tell what time it is. We ate in some interesting places, including a restaurant which was a bit like an antique shop, and a cafe area which was on the roof of another building and had a tree growing up through the middle. So that was Svichtov last autumn, and we leave you now with a quick glass of beer from the pool in the little village of Orish where our houses are.
Our house is a very, very, very fine house with 2 cats in the yard. Life used to be so